And if we can bring the lights back up. And now it is my pleasure, just before lunch here, to introduce the awesome and amazing, some of the students and faculty here at Haskell working with the WPO, the Wetlands Preservation Organization. And they're going to bring out this bench and do an interpretive dance for you all. Okay, I was just trying to see who was still listening and awake here. All right, let's give them a big round of applause.
Hi, my name is Jessica Lackey. I'm a member of the Cherokee Nation, and I'm a senior here at Haskell Indian Nations University. I've been a member of the Wetlands Preservation Organization for almost 2 years now. What I'd like to start is kind of give some background history about the wetlands in Haskell and why it is that we feel so passionate about this area. Haskell opened in 1884 as an Indian boarding school. Indian children were forcibly removed from their families and brought to places like Haskell to be taught, the Eurocentric ways. So they were forced assimilating them into the mainstream culture, basically getting rid of the Native American culture. So when they came to these schools, they weren't allowed to speak their languages. If they had long hair, it had to be cut. Oftentimes, they couldn't associate with other family members that were at the schools with them. And it was a very militaristic, harsh system that these kids went through. A lot of them died. Well, here at Haskell, the wetlands were used to teach the boys how to farm. This is what they wanted them to do in society. But the wetlands were also what did I say earlier? Oh, yeah, sanctuary. Thank you. Site of resistance. From this school, the kids oftentimes ran away to the wetlands because this was a place that they viewed, this was a way to get away from this boarding school, away from this assimilation. And also the families of these children weren't allowed to come to Haskell to visit their kids while they were here. And they also weren't allowed to stay in the town of Lawrence due to prejudices at the time. So a lot of families actually camped out in the wetlands down near the Wakarusa River. And so the kids would run away to their families so that they could hear, news from home and talk about what it was that they were going through. And then a lot of us also believe that the wetlands are a final resting place for a lot of the children who did die here at Haskell. We do have a cemetery, and it has about 100 gravestones, but there are hundreds of children that are still missing and unaccounted for from Haskell. The wetlands, like Marisol next to me just said, that this was a place resisting this forced assimilation. We have a lot of history tied into these wetlands and what happened here at Haskell. In the 1950s, the wetlands were taken away from Haskell. It was deemed surplus land under the termination era, and it was taken away and given to the Lawrence community. And then in the 1960s, I believe, or the 1970s, about 500 acres were given to Baker University as a gift. And so now this is the situation that we have here. The wetlands are kind of separated from Haskell by a road called 31st Street. But currently, since the late 1970s and the early 1980s, there's been plans to build a 6 to 10 lane highway corridor through the Baker wetlands by the Kansas Department of Transportation and the Federal Highway Administration. And so this has been about 20 years of Haskell students and the KU community and other Lawrence community members fighting this road because of, one of the environmental impacts that this road will cause to this wetlands, and two, because of the history that Haskell has tied to it. Like I said, we do believe that there are children still buried out there. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing now.
Hi, thank you, Candy and Brett, for organizing this panel.
or helping to bring everybody together so quickly. It's pretty awesome. My name is Marisol Cortez. I teach at KU, and I've been involved with the WPO since I came to Lawrence to work at KU. So this is my second year here. I'm originally from San Antonio, Texas, and I worked before I came here with Southwest Workers Union, who does a lot. It was very involved in environmental justice work. I was the climate justice organizer for Southwest Workers Union, and so those issues are really, I'm really passionate about those issues. And so when I came here and I kind of learned more about what was happening with the highway that they were proposing, and then just this amazing struggle, resistance against that, and then visited the wetlands, and just immediately felt like that was really important for me to get involved with. And so at KU we have it's a student/community organization called EcoJustice. I'm the faculty advisor of EcoJustice, and we kind of try to bring the struggle that WPO is involved in to specifically KU's involvement in the highway project. It's sort of what we're focusing on this year. KU has 20 acres, I think, is that right? That would be of wetlands. That would be right where Kansas Department of Transportation wants to. I wish we had a map we could kind of show what that looks like, but it's a piece of land that's right where the highway expansion would start. Is that right? And so it's very strategic in terms of getting KU administration to understand their role in the historic injustices that we're trying to fight. So that's sort of been my involvement in the issue.
CO, my name is Kaitlin Cooper. I'm a senior here at Haskell University. I became involved with the Wetlands Preservation Organization the first semester I came here in the spring of '08, and I've just been very honored to be a part of this fight to not allow this freeway to come through this sacred place that I myself have developed a very spiritual connection with. And I will allow my friend Josh here to introduce himself too, and to just keep this going.
Hi, my name is Joshua Hernandez. I'm part of the WPO in my first semester as a sophomore at Haskell. And yeah, it's been good to be in the WPO. And the wetlands are pretty much Haskell's last place of Native American history. So this is our last shot. If the wetlands are destroyed, then pretty much we have nothing else.
Aho hintaro mirerai mintewe tawe hinganike bajo je tunapi kiraje wokigo idao hahuke. My name is Brett Ramey, and I live up in the Iowa Reservation, about an hour and a half straight north of here, on the border of what's now Kansas and what's now Nebraska. I'm also a former student from Haskell, and so for me, the wetlands are kind of the local embodiment for all the things that you all have been sharing over the last few days. It's been a place for me personally to learn, be introduced to issues around environmental justice and around how indigenous peoples have often been, at the forefront for the battles over so-called development, right? And so Lawrence, Kansas is no exception to that. So beginning from the boarding school days, which was explained already by some of the other current students, as well as faculty over the past few days, for me, it's really beautiful to see that an institution that was set up to deliberately eradicate our way of life has now become this place where a lot of us come from all over the country to reclaim a lot of those ways of life, and the wetlands has been one of my reconnecting points. Through not only learning a lot of the political issues that we're facing, but also the literal reconnection to the earth itself. And so we have a couple professors here on campus who would often, we'd hop in the van, or if we were here on campus, we would just walk down there and we would learn all the different uses for plants. So by the end of a day, we'd come back with bags full of nettles and different wild mushrooms and edible greens and plants we could make rope from. And so it really became a place where it embodied that idea of actually asserting our rights as Indigenous people to have those connections and to work with the land and to embrace those skills that we were given by Creator and utilize those plants in a way that it could fuel us spiritually and physically, and also acknowledge their importance and acknowledge that they have their right to be there as well. And so I think about that, and as us up here, as youth, speaking on behalf of young people, I think about plants in themselves in these wetlands as elders. I'm a youth to those wetlands because of what they teach me, either through the plants or through the political issues related to it. And just one plant in particular that I haven't really thought this through, but I'm just going to throw it out and see if it makes sense. But there's one plant in particular. It's a stinging nettle, and it's used for rope. It's really good for purifying your blood in the springtime. So right around now is a really good time to make tea from it and just to eat it. But it's also, as implied in the name, it's stinging nettle. It's also a reminder of how we need to walk carefully, whether we're in the woods or in the wetlands. There's a lot of people will want to wear gloves while they pick it, but for me, I choose to forego the gloves and just go out and force myself to be mindful enough to not get stung, just by using my bare hands and scissors to pick it. But in the event that I do get stung, it's just for me a good reminder that I do need to pay attention to how I walk in this earth and how I interact with those plants. And so those plants themselves have become elders in that way. And so these wetlands are beyond the debate around the highway, but have also carried that place for me, in reconnecting to the plant people and learning what to me has become one of the most important foundations for myself as I move forward. And so as I'm looking around here, I know that everybody from here is coming from somewhere that you have your own version of the wetlands. And so it just made sense to me that that some of the young people here, that we could share a little bit about our local embodiment of the things that we're talking about. And if you haven't already been thinking about how this applies immediately to where you're from, which I imagine a lot of you have, then just kind of begin thinking about that. And I think that can be helpful as we move this conversation forward throughout the rest of the day and beyond. And so another thing I like to think about in terms of youth and elders in our communities is there's one hand where I'm by age I'm youth, and then we have elders throughout the room. But then looking in a global scale, Indigenous people are the elders of this planet, right? And so there's a lot of this knowledge that exists that we need to look to the elders within our own communities, but also provide that guidance as elders for the rest of the world as we're looking for solutions to all the challenges that are faced around the world. And so I just wanted to share that perspective that I have, that was in large part, began by excursions walking around the wetlands and harvesting plants and brewing up teas in some of our professors' classrooms over there. So.
Hi, my name is Claudia LaBrie, and I am a freshman here at Haskell. And I got involved the beginning of the semester, and I was amazed at what the wetlands means to the students here, former students. This is the last wetland in Douglas County, and they're trying to take it away. Several of us went to Denver to hear the court case, and it's going to take approximately, about a year? Do you think, Kelda? Yeah. 3 months to a year is what they said. We are not fighting the freeway except for that one little section of wetland. and it's the area that was given to, Baker took a 30-year lease, and when that was up, they got a quick claim deed, and now the wetlands belongs to Baker, part of it. And what would happen is Baker made an agreement with KDOT to build that freeway through. And so that's what we're fighting, is to save that one section. We're not fighting the whole freeway. We're fighting this one little section. And so, you know, we appreciate you coming here and hearing about our wetlands, and whatever you can do to support. We have a few little flyers, and please pick them up later, and it will give you more information.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Well, first, I just want to thank everyone who's here. Thank you for letting me be a part of this wonderful conference. My name is Kelda Britain, and I am Lackey, Lackey, and Concow from Northern California, and I'm also a student here at Haskell Indian Nations University. This is my senior year here at Haskell, but I remember the first time I came to Haskell, my parents brought me here. And, you know, I'm from Northern California, from the mountains, trees, it's beautiful. And, you know, when we got to Kansas, my parents kind of looked at me like, what do you want to go to school here for? It's flat, I mean. But being a student here and, you know, becoming part of the Haskell community, and, you know, learning about the wetlands, there is beauty here in Lawrence, and Lawrence, Kansas has become my second home, and the wetlands is my home, and that's why I maintain this fight with this wonderful group of people here. We empower each other, and, you know, this fight has gone on for over 20 years, and it will continue to go on. And I'm just so proud of my fellow students who are going to be stepping up to maintain this fight. Because we are a voice for these wetlands. They don't have a voice, you know, in this world right now without us. They do have a voice, but it's not being recognized. It's not being heard. And so as students, we are here to, you know, help bring that voice forward. And now I'm going to hand the mic over to my good friend, Millie.
Yeah, Blackfeet, bushes chin. Tachitni edashache belagana de edashanale. Hosta don the shah. What's out in Shla. Hi, my name is Millicent Pepe. I'm a junior here at Haskell Indian Nations University. I'm enrolled in the Indigenous and American Indian Studies program. I'm also the vice president of the Wetlands Preservation Organization. Here in my hand, I'm holding a pamphlet of what is called the Trail of Broken Promises. This summer, my friends and I are going to walk from this campus to Washington, D.C. to raise awareness about the protection and preservation and importance of preserving sacred sites such as the Wakarusa wetlands. In our hand, we will be carrying a draft piece of legislation approved by the National Congress of American Indians that aims to protect sacred places. So what is sacred? That's really what this question's about, you know, and if you go and look down here at 31st Street, I'm sorry, this is so loud. If you go down here and look at 31st Street, you'll see that the wetlands on this side of Louisiana, and then you'll cross Louisiana and you'll see the Wetlands Mitigation Project. You see, the city of Lawrence has the idea that they can relocate our sacred places, just like they relocated us from our sacred lands. So this forced relocation of these animals and plants is their idea of a solution to a problem with the Native American community. Now, the wetlands were sacred long before humans were even here. You know, I think that we like to really, what's that word that Dr. Wildcat used? Ethnopocentrism. You know, we really care about ourselves. We really think that we defined sacred. You know, we made those wetlands sacred by saying that they were sacred. As human beings, we have that right. No, those lands were sacred and formed 700,000 million years ago, I believe, or 700,000 years ago. And anyway, the point is that they have always been a place for life to thrive and to be, to just live and not have to worry about the worries that come with being here on this planet and living and growing in all these relationships, because we're all connected. And that's hard. That's hard sometimes to be that connected to an environment. But wetlands, you know, they serve as sanctuaries because they have water. And water is life. You know, we're 70% water human beings, and the earth is 70% water herself. You know, and these wetlands are sanctuaries for her most sacred element, which is water. And that's why these animals and plants and people are attracted to them, and that's why they're sacred. But beyond that, what else adds to the sacredity of the wetlands is the fact that this place was a boarding school. In my hand, I'm holding Dr. Teresa Milk's Haskell Institute, 19th Century Stories of Sacrifice in Survival. She has a walking tour of the cemetery behind our school, where she lists the biographies of all the students who are buried behind our campus. But those aren't all the students who died on campus or who died because of boarding schools. Those aren't all the students that are buried. They're sitting over there in a nice little box cemetery. They're scattered underneath the buildings, actually, of most of these places. And they're in the wetlands, too. There's a dump site over there where they used to throw the bodies, I've been told, by several elders. And the students, you know, they died there and they retreated there because they weren't allowed in the city. They weren't allowed in the city of Lawrence. If they went to the city of Lawrence, they had bounty hunters. They had people who would arrest them, who would punish them physically, and bring them back here, you know, or send them to other institutions. Chilocco is connected to this Haskell Rail Trail. This Haskell Rail Trail connects to Chilocco Boarding School. That's on purpose. Anyway, so this summer, you know, we're going to be talking about these things. The Trail of Broken Promises leaves Sunday, May 13th. From the wetlands, we're going to be walking past the cemetery, and then we're going to walk down this Haskell Rail Trail through the city of Lawrence. And we're going to try to define to them what we mean by sacred, what we mean by this can't just be moved and put over here to the other side. I'm gonna end with a quick little story because I really like Dr. Wildcat. I want to give him some props. But anyway, I was sitting over there in his class, and we were talking about, you know, what is sacred, how are the wetlands sacred. And I told him that these iPhones or smartphones, there's like a little app to check out ghosts. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but you can like go ghost hunting around this school. It's pretty scary. Anyway, you could go ghost hunting out in the wetlands. I told him, you go take your little iPhone out there. And we were saying, if that traffic way is built, will the spirit of the wetlands that makes it sacred, will it go too? And I was saying, if it does, then we can just take our little iPhones. Wetlands, where did you go? Sacred, holy wetlands. Anyway, I'm just going to end with that. So, Trail of Broken Promises. It leaves Sunday, May 13th. From here, Haskell Indian Nations University. Yeah.
Questions?
We're going to take questions, but I had Stephen Newcomb wants to come up here and have some comments for you guys, and so I'm going to bring him out to the stage here, and that'll lead into a few questions right before we go to lunch. So we'll have a few more minutes, about 5 more minutes.
Thank you. I'll be extremely brief. It occurred to me as I was listening to these excellent presentations that it would be an interesting proposal to declare that entire wetlands area a war memorial for the war against our cultures, languages, traditions, spirituality. And the acronym that you have for the project, Wetlands, Preservation of Wetlands Project, to switch those words around to POW. Because that's really the origination of the boarding school. Started with they've been taking Geronimo and Apache people to St. Augustine to the fort, military fort, to imprison them as POWs. And then one thing led to another, and of course, Colonel Pratt with his whole scheme. But I make that comment very seriously, because unless we reframe the way that things are discussed, and not using language in the typical and usual and accustomed manner, then things will just be repeating the same patterns. To shift the reality, we have to shift the languaging that we're using. And I would also say, without wanting to criticize, but to make a helpful, what I would hope is taken as a helpful suggestion, that when we're talking about this devastation of our peoples culturally, and by the way, I just so love hearing the languages being spoken on this stage, our original languages, because that means they didn't win, they didn't succeed. And we're standing in the future. We're standing in the very future that they had planned for us. We can read those statements by Indian commissioners of how they were plotting and scheming to destroy everything and assimilate us into their society. And so to make sure that we're still in resistance, my suggestion is to make sure that we're watching how we speak, that we don't say things like our founding fathers. Those are their founding fathers, okay, and the so forth. But the last comment is, when we're speaking about these very grave matters and the deaths of those children that were ripped from their families and homes, who died in various circumstances with not one loved one or anyone to care for them, that we be very careful in how we use our language, not to be laughing around about that. Sorry. Anyway, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Stephen. And just to comment on that, I think that the place that that's coming from is that it is really hard for us to deal with this issue, and we've always had something in our culture that's kept us through these really hard times, and that's the humor that we have. And I think that that's where that was coming from, and so I understand completely both points, because you can feel it here. You can feel the presence. You can feel the heaviness. So.